welcome to another edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour. A little different this week. We're not at the Louisville Free Public Library. They have closed down access to meeting rooms and studios and all other sorts of public gathering spaces. They are still open for people to go and browse and check out books. So if you know looking for some things to do while you're social distancing, that's something you can do. I'm here with Case. We are using Skype today to do a remote call, and we're going to see how this works. New technology, so let's see how it goes. I'm going to hand it over to Case to let him do his normal intros and Twitter and scheduling, which is not much. But
Fair.
Yeah. I'll let you take it over from here, Case.
Yeah, so like Jeff mentioned, coming to you live from the comfort of our own homes today. We'll see how this goes. It's definitely an interesting thing. I did want to make one point about the public library, though. If you don't have your library card and you're looking square in the face of some self-isolation, some quarantining, something like that, before that happens, I would recommend going and getting your library card. You can access all kinds of online options from the library. Their audiobook offerings, digital downloads, movies that are rentable, stuff like that. You can do all that kind of stuff with a library card online without having to get out of your own home. So
Good point.
that's just my little PSA on the library. Trying desperately hard not to hit my desk or hit anything like that because I don't have a shock mount on my microphone. I have a shock mount sitting on my desk right next to me, but it doesn't fit my setup, so I don't really know what's going on with that situation. But like Jeff mentioned, we'll be getting right into it. We tried to get Paulie on. We were so close, according to his text message, close but no bananas.
We got video.
On that one. We did.
We were
could
seeing
see
it.
Paul. We could not read his lips.
Couldn't hear it.
We very nearly got him there. Just some microphone issues. So hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted out sometime this week and can finally get Paul back on the show after what's been almost a month hiatus for Paulie. I don't know if in the history of Cardinal Couple Radio Hour it's gone so many weeks without Paul.
Yeah, I don't think it has.
It's still been continuous.
Yeah.
So we can get started with Twitter. Obviously is going to be a lot more robust than something else. Paulie chiming in on the YouTube live stream says he blames Sam Purcell for his issues. But Paulie tweets is at Cardinal Couple. He's been positing some thoughts about the recent ongoings, which we'll discuss quite a bit in depth as we go through the show this week on Twitter. Also some to say it, some thought. I already used the word thoughts. He put out some comments to players that I think are very poignant and impactful, as a lot of us have been doing as fans of college athletics. There's a bit more connection to players, I think, than a lot of the pro sports, and we're seeing some of the impacts of what's been going on. So follow Cardinal Couple on Twitter. And then you can see all kinds of stuff like that. I tweet is at best case scenario. I've had some thoughts on Twitter as well recently. You know how it goes. Sorry, I'm still trying to process, as a lot of people are. I think this will be the first time really talking through a lot of it for Jeff and myself,
Right.
both. So it'll be interesting to try and get through formulating our thoughts and getting all this out into the ether, as it were. Jeff tweets is at Jeff McAdams and at Card Couple Radio. I would say that you should follow along with Card Couple Radio for all of the upcoming volleyball matches and stuff like that, but not so much.
Yeah, I was just getting that account kind of, the rust brushed off and unlimbered for the spring season for lacrosse and softball, and got a few games in with it, and then that came crashing to a halt. So that's unfortunate.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Jared tweets is at Mr. Anderson Jared. Obviously, with him as well, we'll see some limited action from a Twitter perspective, anyway.
Yep.
Or from photographs perspective.
From photos and sports commentary. He's had some as well, of course, like so many of us, like you said.
Yeah. A good message from Jared out last night about someone else we'll talk about a little bit more
Right.
coming up. That saw some replies from Coach Sowery and the like. If we look into the schedule, like Jeff mentioned, an extremely thin schedule. It's still got everything posted here for the next week. If I expanded it out, it would take up nearly the whole page. But unfortunately, most of these things have canceled.
Yeah.
Written next to them.
Canceled or postponed.
Or postponed.
The terming they're using on them. So a little depressing to see.
Wouldn't read too much into those postponements, as I think that we're going to see that is going to bear itself out a bit longer. So I guess that puts us through the schedule right there.
Right.
I don't know if we want to. Where do we want to start? Do we want to just talk about the lacrosse game that happened? I think.
Yeah. Let's jump into that.
So Louisville lacrosse played what was the last Louisville women's athletic event. Yeah, they played what was the last Louisville women's athletic event of the foreseen future of the spring season. On Monday, when they took on Niagara, brought them here. Lacrosse actually the unfortunate recipients of a free flight.
Yeah, they went to Delaware.
A pair of free flights
to Delaware and back.
Delaware. But Lacrosse took on Niagara, like we said, on Monday. Jeff, I believe you were in attendance.
Yeah, I made it out there. It was my last day before I started my new job, so I was able to get out there. It was a little crazy, but I was trying to do some onboarding stuff for work as well that day, so a little bit of multitasking was out there. It was a fun romp of a game. Cards win it handily, 17-7. So Cardinal athletics for the year goes out on a win. So hey, great.
A pair of wins, or 3 wins really, because then baseball Tuesday, Wednesday, beat the tar out of Chicago State.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. 17-7. Scoring. Not quite by committee the way they have been, but still spread. Allie Hall and Hannah Morris both had hat tricks. Hannah had 4. Allie with 3. Allegra Catalano had a pair. Carolyn Blaylock had a pair. Alex McNicholas had a pair. Paige Richborg had a pair. Just kind of reading through them here. And a couple of singles by Maddie Birch and Beldora. All names we've heard in the lacrosse season, in the aborted short cross season so far.
No first goals there.
Yeah, no first ones for career goals or season goals or anything like that. So, but all players that have been contributing and were contributing well. So it was good to see that. I will credit. Holy cow! Will I credit Niagara's goalkeeper? This may be the stat of the game when you look at saves. Niagara, saves for Louisville. Rachel Floric had 7, which is, respectable. The Niagara goalkeeper, and I don't know the name off the top of my head. Not list. Oh, here it is. Let me pull up her name.
Michelle Messinger.
Yeah, had 20 saves. She was. Louisville was firing shots, and she was stopping them. She did a great job with that. So. Credit to her for not letting this get more away from letting the game get more away from them than it could have. So it was a fun game.
It was a lot of fun to keep up with on Twitter. I think we saw in this game something that Coach Teeter has been waiting to see. Louisville really put the pedal to the metal in the first half. Niagara only scored 2 goals back to back for the entire game to make it 3-7 and then 4-7 before keeping it kind of close. The closest they would keep it at 5-8 before Louisville rattled off a few, and then in the second half Louisville just went on a huge tear to jump out in front. So I think that's kind of what Coach Teeter was looking at. We saw the frustration last week from the game where Louisville kind of had it in hand, but I don't remember exactly who the opponent was, but let the opponent get a bit of confidence, if nothing else. And in this one, Louisville really I think was trying to turn a corner offensively and defensively. From a game control perspective, it was going to be interesting to see them in another game against stronger competition when they traveled up to see Delaware. We first thought that was just going to be a game played in front of no fans, and then about 30 minutes before that match was set to start, that one was canceled, along with just about everything on Thursday, as that was Black Thursday in the sports world.
Yeah, the day sports came crashing down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Coach Teeter in the Niagara, after the Niagara game, credited draw controls. And that is another big stat in this one. 21 draw controls for Louisville versus 4 for Niagara. It really did control the game. You mentioned control in your comments there. They really did control the game. They came out in at least one of who was it? I don't remember. Paige Richborg, I think, that came into the post game comments as well. One of her goals was straight off a draw control. I mean, it was literally draw control in, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds later. How long does it take to run from half field to right in front of the goal? That was how long it was before she slapped it into the back of the net. It was straight off the draw control, run down there, boom, fired into the goal. So
yeah, she and Alex McNicholas both with 7 draw controls apiece.
Yeah, really, we're in control on the at the center field, which it's interesting. This is one of the few sports left where after a score, that possession of the ball is up in the air, right? I mean, basketball used to be that way, right? Back in the really it was first invented, Naismith first invented it. You would have when somebody made a shot, they would have another jump ball, right? That hasn't been the case in forever, it feels like. But yeah, lacrosse still kind of works that way. There's still a draw control.
Lacrosse and hockey, I think.
Yeah. Hockey would be, yeah.
Field hockey, you just take it
field
at a
hockey,
free position.
you take it at half court, but you take it. It's not a... Yeah.
It's not a drop.
Soccer is not that way. Yeah, I can't think of any other sports that are that way. So, yeah. So definitely to be able to have those draw controls, it's kind of like getting, like if to compare it to basketball, it's kind of like getting a basket and then also getting the offensive rebound at the same time, right?
If you catch it before it touches the ground, you get to get another possession.
Right. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. It's kind of neat a neat aspect of the sport that really allows the team to kind of take over, which kind of makes me think maybe they don't do that maybe someday the rule changes. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not sure whether I like this or like it the other way, but it's interesting. It makes it an interesting aspect of the sport anyway. So
I think something that you see that's interesting with draw controls, and you see it in soccer, you can have control of the ball and then immediately turn it over anyway. The same thing can happen in draw controls. I mean, you can get the ball and then immediately have your stick slapped and the ball goes flying to somewhere else. What stood out to me on this one was Louisville's defensive play. Like we said, the shots on goal. I mean, Rachel Florek, saved half. 50%, and Niagara really had almost the same save percentage. They just did it on an incredibly higher number of shots.
Right.
But the thing that I noticed about the defense, not the goalie play particularly, is Louisville was 17 for 17 on clear opportunities. If the ball got into the back or got into the defensive end and it was available, Louisville was able to get it back out of the defensive end if they could take control.
Right.
Counter that with Niagara, who was only 18 for 27, opening up a lot more opportunities, really leading to Louisville's 37 shot on goal attempts.
Right.
Louisville was a bit more erratic with the ball. They had 37 shots on goal out of 52 total shots, so a few misses here and there. Niagara was very clean. They only had 17 total shots, and 14 of them were on frame, so that's a lot of good aim, I would say. But like we mentioned, Louisville really just kind of ran away with this game. It was going to be interesting to see how that season continued, whether Louisville was able to turn that corner, get some more exciting ACC play and see what happens. But like you mentioned,
and it's a little bit frustrating because this is something we talked about earlier, that the Louisville lacrosse program, as a program, has never won an ACC game.
Right.
it's frustrating because we've had some really good teams, and they just haven't been, credit to quality ACC lacrosse that haven't been able to be able to pull that off yet. And they were close this year. They were 1 point away and surging towards the end of the game against Wake Forest, and just weren't able to get it done there. I think this might have been a year where they could have gotten one in, but now we'll have to wait until next year to see if that happens. I think it will. I mean, Teeter's putting together a good program. He's bringing in great players. You can see the improvement game by game, let alone year by year. So yeah, it's just frustrating.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this right now, and I just pulled up the lacrosse schedule because I was trying to see, what's a game that maybe Louisville can come away with towards the end of this. Interestingly, the schedule only shows postponements up to the Boston College game on April 4th. They have no note on Duke, at Duke at April 11th.
Interesting.
Or home against Notre Dame for April 18th. So I haven't seen an official press release, but I'm wondering if they've walked back their statement and pulled something similar to the Big Ten, which obviously we can talk about in a little bit. I wrote about it in my article in particular.
Yeah, okay, so April 4th to April 8th is where that gap is, right? Because I was looking at softball the other day, and I think it was similar. It was a similar sort of time frame. Yeah, so April 5th against Pittsburgh shows is postponed. April 7th versus Lipscomb is still, according to the schedule, is still on. So maybe they've only said up to this point and they'll reassess, which I think is reasonable, right?
But like I said, I haven't seen that come out from anywhere because that would be a change from the first official statement that they made, which was following along with the NCAA. Like, it's over, right?
Yeah.
But like I mentioned in today's article, the Big Ten walked that back yesterday. They said, no, we're just going to April 9th. And there are a ton of questions that come with that, obviously. If your organization cancels all events, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you working towards with the rest of the season?
Yeah.
How does that impact the change that was made to relieve all players of eligibility?
Right, and like you said, if you do resume, are different conferences and schools resuming at different times, and what sort of competitive advantage does that give to people? There's a lot to be figured out in the coming weeks, if they're going to try to resume any sort of season this year, based on development of the situations, in our communities. I don't know. There's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of questions that need to be answered. But there's going to be some time to have those questions on how do you restart things potentially. I think the initial thing is, hey, let's get things shut down at least for now, for the public health benefits of that, and then figure out how to go from there.
Oh, so Paulie did correct us here. Scott Teeter has not won an ACC game. They did win an ACC game under Kelly Young, apparently. So apologies for that, Paul. Thank you for correcting us.
I knew we'd won conference games. I didn't know if it was ACC. I knew we won in the Big East.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. I wasn't sure about ACC. Interesting.
So, to go along with our comments about the schedule, I just scrolled up to the top of the women's tennis schedule and found it quite funny that the countdown has reset itself to account for all the postponed games. So according to the women's tennis schedule, the next match is in 27 days and 40 minutes. So keep an eye out for that one. Mark it on the calendar.
Yeah.
So that leads us, I guess, to what we were talking about earlier, probably the extent of the show, or we can start with one. Moment of condolences. It came out yesterday morning that Miss Brackmeyer, the
Cheryl
Brackmeyer, the beloved former coach and supporter,
just about everything, but particularly the
field hockey team, did pass away yesterday morning. Like we mentioned, it's sad to see, sad to hear about. the team will certainly be struggling as they contend with that. Um, it's impactful. Um, a second mother or grandmother, I believe she acted as for a lot of the players, a lot of the student athletes, and they're people too. So, despite what's happening, despite athletic seasons being truncated, um, things things coming to a close unexpectedly, life goes on, and things are happening outside of the sports world, and um, unfortunately could continue happening in such a way, in ways that we're
Well,
maybe not mentally prepared for, emotionally prepared for, as we go forward. But we do want to offer our sincerest condolences to Miss Bragmeier's family, to the field hockey family, to everyone impacted by her life.
hmm absolutely. I had the opportunity, Paulie and I both had the opportunity to meet her several times. I think Jared probably also as well. Several times when she had come to various field hockey events over the years, over the past few years, with her daughter. And just, she came in and she would come up to the press box. She wasn't technically press, but, she got to go wherever she wanted because she was awesome. But so, she would come up to the press box because it was air conditioned and easier to deal with. And man, the whole place would jump and in response to her because she was that important, and everyone knew who she was. She, yeah, like one of the times the game was on. I think it was on ESPNU, and they had like the top national field hockey commenters, play-by-play, and color analysts. And unfortunately, I'm forgetting her name. The color analyst, particularly, who really knows the game of field hockey and the history of it. At halftime, came over and looked at me and said, "Is that Miss Breakmeyer over there?" I went, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, I gotta go talk to her." And this is a national field hockey analyst that knew her and was awed by her presence, to be honest. So, she was an integral part of that program years and years later, decades later from the time that she had any official involvement. So, definitely, the team's always doted on her. We're thrilled to see her there. And that'll be a little bit, it's some extra sadness in a time when things are all topsy turvy to begin with. So,
Yep. And as Paul mentioned, always a provider of candy.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's just where we'll leave that. I think it's a loss for the field hockey community at large, like you mentioned.
yeah,
Um, then the next topic of conversation is the one, unless you've been living under a rock or some other way indisposed, you must surely have heard by now. Things have evolved quite rapidly over the last 4 days. The last 4 days have felt like 4 months or 4 years, even as
yeah.
the United States as a whole continues to grapple with the spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the coronavirus that is
COVID-19, yeah, whatever
that
terming
leads to
you
the
use for it.
COVID-19 disease. Yeah.
Yeah,
Trying to use the correct terminology the way that they have
right.
defined it. It's the SARS-CoV-2 virus is the name of the coronavirus that leads to the COVID-19 disease. It's just
Is that
there's
really
a
it?
lot of
Okay.
yeah, that's it. It's complicated. I'm not a medical professional in any way and would not portend to be. So it has affected the sports world in ways that we didn't expect. This will be um, an interesting weekend. I've seen people mention the day after the MLB All-Star game is typically the worst day in sports. It's generally the only day of the year where there is no sporting event. And the United States is currently looking at such a time as that for the
For
foreseeable future.
weeks, yeah, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah,
um, with IndyCar and NASCAR, I think being the final shoes to drop yesterday.
Did they
They
actually? Okay, I
canceled.
had not heard
Yeah,
those specifically, but
IndyCar and NASCAR had canceled their events after originally saying that they would be no fans. So to give a timeline, earlier in the week, it was announced, or as it started to ramp up, teams were pushing back on the concept that they would play in front of no fans at all levels. Um, Cities started to take matters into their own hands. Santa Clara County in California pushed that they would require large gatherings of more than a certain number of people to be held without spectators or otherwise postponed. And that was going to force the Golden State Warriors to play in front of no fans, which they announced, I believe, on Tuesday. Wednesday came the announcement that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. Um, and that was just before a game was set to tip off in Oklahoma City. That canceled that game. The Pelicans refused to come out for their game after finding out that the referee for their game had come into or had just reffed a Jazz game. That ended that, and the NBA quickly shut down the whole season. So that was the first shoe to drop.
right.
On Wednesday night, everyone was holding their breath. The NCAA announced that they were going to play without fans. The Ivy League canceled spring sports. The Ivy League had already canceled their conference tournament and announced that if there was an NCAA tournament, that Princeton would be playing in it for the women and Yale for the men, to Harvard's chagrin. And Thursday came. The Big East were the only team to play a game, and they played a half. As all of the conference tournament dominoes fell, once all the conference tournaments were canceled, it was a matter of time. The NCAA, like I said there would be no fans. I believe it was Friday or later in the day on Thursday that the NCAA finally came out and announced the cancellation of March Madness, and in doing so also canceled all spring sports tournaments at the same time, which was, I think, the weirdest part of all of that. People obviously thought that maybe March Madness could be postponed, that there was no reason to cancel the spring championships with so much uncertainty. Perhaps a bit of optimism that things will blow over quickly, I think.
Yeah, but even man, like something with March Madness, in the tournament, just the logistics of trying to postpone something like that. I'm just not sure that's a practicable thing,
Right.
just logistically. You know, so even if the health crisis passes on and there's time later in, let's say, in May, to if there would be a time period where you could put on a sport tournament like that over 3 weeks, where the players are still active in school, just the logistics of planning the facilities and the people and the travel, I'm just not sure it's a practical thing to do.
Yeah.
From that reason.
And it did come out yesterday that the NCAA had not come to that decision lightly to cancel March Madness. They had considered postponement. They had considered alternative options. They had considered a postponed Sweet 16 only. They did not want to cancel. Probably not for altruistic reasons, not for the fans. But that's an NCAA conversation that is completely separate. But they were trying to come to a different decision than the one that they ultimately landed on. But I think, as most people can agree, it is an incredibly unfortunate decision. But it is probably the correct decision that the NCAA made. We've also seen, in addition to the NBA, the NHL has canceled their season. The MLB has postponed the start of their season for at least 2 weeks. Golf has postponed the Masters. IndyCar and NASCAR, like I mentioned, have postponed their seasons. F1 globally has postponed their season. The English Premier League in soccer and all of English football originally announced that they were going to continue with games as scheduled this weekend. And then the Arsenal manager tested positive for it, and they changed their minds. And they canceled all competition as well. So across the globe, very few sports ongoing. I think the Japanese basketball league is actually starting back up this week after they've been on a 4-week hiatus of their own.
Yeah, of course, Japan got hit early by this,
Right, right.
so presumably they're on the downslope of it. So I haven't really seen news from Japan on that, but presumably they're on the downslope and could reasonably do that at this point.
So, like we mentioned, the one that I think catches everyone's attention is the decision by the NCAA to cancel spring championships, which ultimately led to, I think, the decision by all the conferences to go ahead and originally cancel all spring athletics, following suit with the Ivy League. Like we mentioned, the Big 12 or Big 10 has walked that back already. I saw something yesterday that made it sound like the Big 12 was also walking that back. Like we mentioned, we've looked at the schedules today. It sounds like the ACC is changing that. And it really opens up a lot of questions because NCAA announced yesterday that all student athletes of spring sports would be granted relief on eligibility. So presumably any seniors, anyone is granted that additional year of eligibility. This year will not toll. They'll be playing again next year as if this one didn't even happen. Obviously, that's going to impact baseball the least. Players that are ready to go are going to go
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest thing, I was having a conversation with someone at work yesterday, the weirdest thing about baseball, in my opinion, is the draft. And you're eligible for the draft after high school, after your junior year, and after your senior year. But if you're a senior this year and you're getting to play again next year, are you eligible for the draft again? That's a weird question. Paul just mentioned if women's basketball seniors are eligible to return. The NCAA is still mulling over. They're still mulling over the decision to grant relief to winter sports. I wrote about that in my article today. I don't think that's appropriate. It's incredibly unfortunate. It's incredibly unfortunate if obviously if winter sports are completely canceled, they're unable to continue in their postseasons. But the way that I interpreted it is they did play their whole seasons. Postseason is an added-on thing. I don't think it's.
Yeah,
I don't think
mean,
we'll see relief granted to fall or to winter sports.
Yeah, there's logic, and you and I are both coming at it from a kind of engineering mindset because we're both kind of in that field. There's logic, but there's also PR. you know, it may be something that they do this because people are pushing them to because of the air quotes. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers now. Injustice of the situation. I don't know. And like I said, that can be decided in the future, and figure out what makes sense and what the community, what the industry, let's call it what it is. It's an industry that makes money. What the industry thinks of it. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, would it be fantastic? Sure.
Yeah.
Paulie mentioned Bianca Dunham coming back. That'd be awesome. Jess Limley getting to continue her career. On the men's side, we'd obviously probably see Ryan McMahon continue his career. Some other players would get the opportunity. It would be great for a lot of players. I don't know if it's something they'll do.
Yeah.
With how quickly things are changing, with how quickly people are making decisions, with how much we still don't know, I think it's hard to even speculate about something like that.
Yeah.
Celine Funky will be back, Paul. I assume she's not going anywhere. She'll be granted that additional year of eligibility, unless, like we mentioned, all these conferences are doing something weird.
Yeah.
If they end up forcing the NCAA to change their minds, I can imagine a lot of people are going to be angry about that.
Yeah. And I suspect Celine Funky, Paul mentions in our chat that, he wants to see her back, and I do too, because she's a lot of fun, right? We enjoy interacting with her as fans, and for those of us that do, the post games and other more involved with it, she's a lot of fun just to talk to. So yeah, we'd love to see her back. I'd love to, and probably she does. But by the same token, if she graduates, she may go off and start her career. I mean, she's not going to have a career playing softball. Nobody has a career playing softball these days, for the most part. Like a small handful of people worldwide. So maybe she goes off and gets started on her career. I'd love to see her back, but I don't know. We'll see.
She's an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
according to Paulie.
Yeah.
It's like having him here in the studio, guys.
Kinda, yeah.
If you only knew. We've got him on video. We get to see him. We can't hear him. He's chatting with us. He's making funny faces. It's great.
Yeah.
Still getting his input. Yeah, the thing I keep coming back to is this weird decision by, I mean, it's not weird. It's probably the right decision. It's the decision everyone should have made to begin with, and as it pertained to spring sports, is just delay.
Right.
Just delay. You can announce a suspension. You can come back. You can find out. I don't know if in 2 weeks anything's going to be different. I mean, nobody really knows, right? We haven't been able to figure that out. If we're going to be able to, as a country, if we're going to be able to slow things down, if the spread is going to continue, if it's going to get worse, we don't know. And maybe ultimately, all these conferences that announce in the first week of April they're going to reassess are looking at it in the first week of April and saying, yeah, nothing's different.
Yeah.
We still can't have games. We still can't come out.
Yeah. And they, I think obviously based on that concept, you take all these announcements that come out and you say, okay, this is what people are currently thinking. And we saw how rapidly the news evolved over the course of this week.
Right.
I joked with somebody that, I started my job on Tuesday and I feel like I'm already having my 6-month anniversary, right? News is happening fast. We're having daily or twice daily briefings from Governor Beshear here in Kentucky, from Fisher, mayor here in Louisville.
Fisher, yep.
Yeah, just to kind of get the information out there in a timely manner to try to keep up with this because it's going so fast. So I think you take all of these announcements and say, okay, here's what the plan is. But like everything else, this is evolving, and it's evolving incredibly quickly. So changes are going to happen. You're going to see changes in, okay, this is what we said, but now we're going to try and do this. This is all unprecedented territory here for us. So don't take this as something that's hard and fast that can't be changed in the future. There's there's the logistics of it, like we were talking about with March Madness, but there's also a lot of things that are not logistically challenging like that, where changes can be made. Changes kind of going back to where before, where the kind of going back on what's been announced here. This is the current plan. It may change, except that things are going to be a little uncertain for a while, and learn to roll with it a little bit is unfortunately the reality.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen from the NCAA in the past, and in particular this week, flexibility is not their strong suit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the conferences are now coming back and saying, we're going to reassess. That, like we said, that's the right move. But the NCAA didn't do that. They've made definitive statements. It's hard to walk back definitive statements. It's awkward. It poses more questions than it does answers, really. When you make decisions in haste, this is what you end up with. And obviously the right choice probably should have been to, announce some flexible plan, like you mentioned. This is the plan now. It gives you more leeway to do things. If you just make a statement that, we're suspending play, this is what it is, and then, in 2 weeks, if things have changed, then you can change that.
Yeah. We're getting a little far afield. Well, I'm getting a little far afield from our normal topic here, but I think you see a lot of, again, air quote, leaders here, and I'm going to try not to be political because this is not just a political statement.
Where's he going? I know
this is not just a political statement because I see it in the corporate world too, who want to project an air of being in control and being in authority and being being able to make, I'm a decision maker, and stuff like that. Really not trying to be political, even though that statement may have just sounded like it. But that a lot of people a lot of leadership like that, people in leadership roles, people in positions of authority, air quotes again, that try to put on that air of it. And, sometimes it's better just to say, hey, here's our current situation. Here's where things are going. Here's our current thinking. We may evolve on this. And to be upfront about that possibility can be the better leadership course of action. Can actually provide more trust in that transparency. That transparency can provide more trust in what the leadership is doing, in decision making. So, I would advise leaders on that. I'm a manager in my company, and I try to take that into my way of doing things, but not everybody does. So, like I said, a lot of that sounded political, and there are probably political implications to it, but it's not strictly a political thing. Like I said, I see it in the corporate world too.
Yeah, to pull that to private practice and to sports, I mean, it's all one thing, right? The United States is a large place.
Right.
It's a large place made up of diverse areas. There's different densities of people. There's different things going on. And when you've got, international companies or fully national companies that are spread across the U.S., and it's fully national organizations like the NCAA, currently in, the southeastern part of the country, or just the straight up eastern part, it doesn't seem like there's that much that is affecting people. But when you look at larger population centers, more epicenters of the epidemic, like the West Coast, I mean,
Washington State has been hit hard.
Right, and they're parts of these national organizations, these national companies, and you have to react, I don't want to say globally because that's not the phrase that I intend, but you have to react completely with your whole organization or your whole company, and that leads you to make these decisions that seem completely far-fetched,
right,
or at least a little bit far-fetched to some people. Where it's not as impactful, right? I mean, people who are watching, people in Kentucky who love basketball, who have only seen, 12 confirmed cases so far, 15, however many it is.
I think it's 28 in Kentucky now, actually.
Well, that got aggressive quickly.
Maybe not.
15 yesterday.
Maybe it's 28 tested, 15 positive. I don't know. I don't remember.
Either way, where it's not the same as is in Washington. The Pac-12 conference can't do anything. They're all in areas that are being heavily hit. California, LA in particular.
Yeah. And certainly Washington, Seattle area. Yeah.
Right. It's that conference is out of commission. How do you play softball games? How do you contend that you're going to have a softball tournament when the Pac-12 doesn't even know when they're going to be able to resume school?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a weird situation. Like we said, it's ever evolving. This has been an hour and a half that I've been off Twitter. Who knows what could have happened in that time, right? That's how quickly it's been. Is that it seems like you can't afford to miss any time in an ever-changing news, or everything you say is outdated.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, and I am 4 days into my new job, started Tuesday, and it's been entertaining. I'm joining a team. I'm a manager of a team. There's 7 of us that we're spread geographically. We're spread from the West Coast of North America all the way to, I guess, farthest east. We have one guy in Italy, right? And the responses and the perceptions that people have on these is crazy, because, I mean, you got a guy in Italy. They're practically,
shut down.
Yeah, I mean, like, you leave your house and you got police on you going, what are you doing, right? To places where it's just not an issue right now, basically. They're thinking about it, they're planning for it, but, like, there's not a significant outbreak in their areas. Like, here in Louisville, there's not a huge amount here in Louisville, so it's, I went out and got my coffee this morning. I made sure I used contactless payment. I made sure I didn't touch anybody. I stayed far away from people, but, I went and got my coffee. So
you grabbed a cup of coffee from another person.
Yes, but yeah, Heine Brothers, they're doing a really good job keeping things sanitary and stuff. So, thumbs up for them. But anyway, the reaction is different. But I'm in an organization of 75,000 people in the overall company that has to react for all of those people. They've shut down require work from home for all of North America at this point. They actually turned off door badges, so like the badges you used to get open the doors, to unlock the doors to get in, just turned them off. You can go to an office.
You didn't pay attention.
Yeah, you could go to an office. You can't get in it. Yeah. So, but it's interesting because some parts of the company are much less remote than the part that I'm in, and I'm watching this company, and I'm certainly looking at it as outsider's eyes, having just joined, that they're talking about, oh, we're going to do work from home. This is a big change, blah, blah, blah. And like my team and the teams adjacent are all like, yeah, we've been doing this for years. So, okay, nothing much changes for us. So it's a little amusing to see kind of the different aspects of the company doing that. So I don't know. I'm kind of off topic here, but.
Well, I mean, I think it's fair, right?
Yeah.
Because I look at the same thing. I work in construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Construction doesn't really.
There's no work from home options.
It's not going to
there.
stop, right?
Yeah.
Unless something aggressive changes, unless we get some more imperative orders, construction is not going to stop.
Right.
And contractors can't work from home.
Right.
The designers can to some extent, but
right.
we also have members of our team who go to construction sites. They have to see what's going on, and my company has been, pushing to encourage people who are at risk. We got an email yesterday encouraging people who are at risk that they should work from home. Our company announced they bought additional VPN licenses to ensure that we're more prepared in case we do need to go remote workforce. But
yeah.
It's different. Everyone's different. Every area is different. I mean, we're a national company. We have offices in Boston. We have offices in Houston, Texas. I mean, it's changing rapidly and in different ways for different people. And it's weird. There's a lot of unknown. It's at least a little bit scary. Like I mentioned in my article, because you just don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah. One of the products that the company that I work for sells is a video conferencing solution. That part of the company is right now scrambling happy, but they're also kind of scrambling to bring up more internet capacity, right? Because the usage on the internet, like I said, I'm a network engineer, this is what I do, right? The actual transmission connections and stuff like that, has been climbing, which ultimately is good, but it's also, it causes a problem. You got these network engineers going, oh, wait a minute, we need to bring up, these new circuits to add more capacity to it. So it's interesting, just all of the fallout from this in so many ways in life that you don't always necessarily see. So it's crazy.
It is. We've gotten, like you mentioned, far afield from sports.
Yeah.
But I think this is just kind of where it leads.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot we don't know. Like we mentioned, obviously, with the site not having any athletics to write about.
Right.
We're obviously all volunteers.
Right.
Cardinal Couple does not seek to make profit. They seek to bring you information. There are a lot of people who are not like us. There are a lot of people who are impacted directly in the pocket by something like this.
Yeah.
It is an incredibly unfortunate time for them. Those who are contracted are the lucky ones. The vast majority of sports writers are not. We've seen players in professional leagues have moved to assist those who are now out of work.
Right.
With
people
with
working in the arenas. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is impacting everyone in some way. If it's not impacting you directly, it is impacting someone you know almost definitely.
Yep.
So.
Well, and here at Cardinal Couple, we have Daryl on the show on occasion, Daryl Faust, who's, works with the Louisville Bats. Right?
Yeah.
That's her day job.
Works for the ACC network.
Works for the ACC network, right?
Not issuing any games, right?
Right. This is probably impacting her, and certainly want to, reach out to her and say, if I can help in any way, let me know. But yeah, keep an eye on your neighbors and loved ones, and with social distancing, we try to. You want to kind of stay apart, but also make sure nobody goes gets lost in the shuffle.
Right. Absolutely. Um, the one thing to always remember is if you are a young person, not at risk person, that there are those around you who are not the same as you.
Right.
If you can get through an illness such as this, an extremely aggressive flu with severe symptoms, that's you, right? That's not everybody,
Right.
and it's extremely infectious. So just try to stay safe, try to make good decisions,
Right.
um,
Because even if it doesn't
and
impact,
let
even if you
and let
get this virus and it doesn't impact you heavily, you can still carry it to others. So yeah,
Right.
do be careful.
and let people know.
Yeah.
You know, if even if you can't get a test, I mentioned this in the article today. If you can't get a test, but you've ruled out everything else, if you don't have flu A, you don't have flu B, you don't have a common cold, but you've got a bunch of symptoms, let people know.
Yeah.
You know, you can't tell them, hey, I tested positive for it, but you can at least say, hey, I didn't test positive for any of these things. So
Yeah.
extrapolate.
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
that's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to get out there.
Yeah.
About that. We do have a request from Polly. There is an event still ongoing. There are some sports apparently.
Yep.
Horse racing at Oaklawn is happening. Check out Polly's picks on Handicapping Heroes, or I guess it's just Polly's picks now. Is what he's changed the name of the site to. So make sure you check out Polly's picks for his handicapping for the day at Oaklawn.
Yeah.
We made it almost a whole hour.
Yeah. We went off
Incredibly,
topic
we
a bit, but
we
you
didn't
know.
talk about sports all that much. But Jeff, do you have any final thoughts? I think we've maybe gone through most of what our
Yeah.
thoughts are, but
You know,
anything else?
it's okay to be bummed at the loss of sports, but also acknowledge, but just keep in mind and acknowledge that it's the right decision. It's the right thing to do. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's also it's the right decision. You can be bummed that sports are gone, but also acknowledge that yes, this is the right thing to do. So don't feel bad about that dichotomy.
Yeah. Mine would be that in disaster preparedness, in pandemic response, epidemic response, appearing to have overreacted is the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
You have to not be afraid to look like you've overreacted, because if you look like you've overreacted, you've probably done something right.
Yeah. I hearken that back to Y2K.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I read an article from somebody the other day about that, claiming that the Y2K was all a hoax because nothing happened of it. I'm like, no, I lived through that. I was doing systems and network engineering at that time. It was 5 years into my career doing that. Y2K was none of it because a whole lot of work got put into it. So,
Exactly.
yeah. You could either look like you overreacted or underreacted.
Yeah,
Neither
there's no
is
middle. You can't
Yeah.
look like you reacted appropriately.
Right.
So keep that in mind, and we'll see how the news shakes out next week. Make sure you follow along with the site. We'll be bringing you news. I believe the goal is to bring you some prognostication for future seasons,
Right.
some looks back at our favorite players, our favorite games and events, stuff like that. So make sure you follow along with the site, and we'll hope to see you next week.
Yeah. Hopefully with Polly on board and maybe with a quiz. We'll see.
Indeed.
All
So,
right. Thanks
catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.